Hi, and welcome to another episode of Astrologers Chatting Over Coffee. It's interesting, the other day somebody said, "Did you steal that from Seinfeld?" But actually, it's kind of like an amalgamation of a number of different things. You know, there was that show with Mike Myers it was a skit that he used to do that was Coffee Talk. And we really think that Seinfeld got the idea from that, and then Seinfeld had his coffee talk,
Comedians
with
talking in cars, talk with
comedians in
coffee.
cars
Right.
chatting over coffee. Not chatting over coffee. Is it chatting over
No,
coffee?
with coffee.
With coffee. Getting coffee.
Getting coffee.
And so I think really it happened very kind of organically because we're astrologers. We love to chat. And we love coffee.
Yes.
So it's astrologers chatting over coffee.
And there's a long tradition of this because astrologers are a very literate group by nature. A lot of the oldest literature on the planet was astrological literature, and astrologers, when they get together, tend to have coffee early in the day and then have wine later in the day. So if you have to do it the other way around, it's not quite as productive.
Although out here living in wine country, there is a concept called breakfast wine.
Yes, a very good concept.
Yeah, I
Breakfast
thought that
wine.
was pretty interesting.
Yes,
It's called Riesling.
Rieslings, yes. Dry Rieslings,
But we digress. Ralph, what are we going to chat about today?
We're going to chat about the planetary calendar and the process that we've gone through in taking it over as the publishers. We've been the astrologers of it since, I guess, 2002 now. It's been published since 1949. It's the second oldest astrological calendar in the country, as far as we can tell. The oldest almanac that we actually know about was Benjamin Franklin's almanac, his Poor Richard's Almanac, which was an astrological calendar. There's a long tradition here, but we, trying to keep the tradition up, and we're having to balance between making sure that the very loyal customers that we've had, some of these people have been buying this for 50 years, keep buying it, because after all, it is a business, and also allowing the calendar to transform and be prepared for the future.
Yeah, I love the evolution that we're taking. We're trying to really kind of slow track it a little bit.
Some of us are, more than
well,
others.
he's got more ideas than I can keep up with. So, I'm like, one or two, pick your one or two best ideas. But I think we've got certainly the best idea yet coming up for the 2020.
Yes. Well, first of all, after many, many years of having a very simple calendar with the cute little emblem in the center, we're actually going to a more colorful cover. Because after all, from the time when this first started, this is a woodblock etching that they originally started off with. It's an old technology. The amount of things that have been done with photography and digital photography, and at the time when this was done, 1949, remember, there hadn't been any rockets sent up into outer space yet.
So for a quick sort of sneak peek of the 2020 calendar, think NASA and Hubble Space Telescope.
Yes, the Goddard Center. Yes. And so actually one of the shots that's on the back is actually taken by a probe that's been sent to the moon, the lunar probe, and a little Earthrise taken from the lunar probe, and that's on the back.
Well, I think that's very interesting because we're playing with perspectives here. And isn't that what we do with astrological consultations and when we're working with people anyway? We're helping them find the perspective that is both in their natal chart and in their transiting charts. And so to have this change of perspective, I think, is a lot of fun for us because we take it literally. Some of us more so than others.
Well, it's funny you should bring up the word perspective because, my original training is as an artist, and I worked in the field for many years, still do. And one of the things you learned in art is how to deal with perspective. And what's interesting, historically, perspective was not always part of art. If you go back to the time of the Egyptians, there was no perspective. Even up until the early Renaissance, there was no perspective done inside of art. It was basically done as flat images. And it was only in the early Renaissance when they started doing research on optics, on the creation of lenses, that they started doing serious work in terms of creating perspective in art. And if you look at some of the earliest versions of this, the perspective goes completely out of bounds. But that's about the time when it evolved, which was early Renaissance, 12, 13, 1400s, coincidental with the developing of the lenses that Galileo used for discovering, among other things, the moons of Jupiter. And they were part of the same movement, the art and the astrologers and the astronomers. It was part of the same motion. And perspective is something that is involved when you look at any particular space. And our other work is, of course, in feng shui and geomancy. So we're always looking at how do people perceive their space? What impression does their space give them? For instance, we actually relate time to distance within our physical bodies. We relate time to distance. When we walk in a room, we know that the things that are right here, we can get immediately. But the things on the far side of the room are going to take us 3 or 4 or 5 steps to get there. It's in the future. Things that are further away are in the future. And that's how the body relates to time. See, you hear people say all the time, the body only recognizes right now. That's true. But it knows what the future is because it can see it.
If you show it to them.
Right.
And it's very interesting because we do use that concept in feng shui, also not just distance, but in vertical height, the past, present, and future. What your eyes are directed to is your present. What you have to look up for is the future.
Right.
And what you look down for is the past, whereas, the length of distance also adds another dynamic to timing.
Exactly.
Hence, we're space and time, right?
Right. When you walk out your door and you look up and you see storm clouds overhead, you know that in your future, you're going to need that umbrella that's by the door. So it really is. You look up and you see the future.
Right.
So as a result, we always kind of incorporate, geomancy and feng shui into our work as astrologers.
Well, of course, also the calendar is about looking ahead.
Yes.
So it gives you a way to sort of plan for the future. It's interesting because when we're doing the calculations for the calendar, we get kind of stuck in a time warp.
Yes.
Because, it's like January of 2019. It's just a brand new year starting,
Right.
and we're working on the calendar for 2020.
Yes.
And then by the time we finish that, it's like the end of April. And by the time we're getting it off to the printer, we're already working out ideas and starting to do some of the basic calculations for 2021. So we have to remind ourselves constantly, who am I? Where am I? What's going on right now?
When are we?
Luckily, we have this. We can refer to it.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. The moon's in Taurus. Let's go out to dinner.
But it's funny how many times we have to look down at the corners of our computers to see its date because we just lose track.
It really is. It's really an interesting phenomenon.
Right. And when you're dealing with, forecasting to the future, and it took a while before, the original calendar did not have forecasting in it. That was actually one of our innovations that we started as the astrologers a bunch of years ago. But when you're thinking about the future, there's an expression in health which is, you want to be there when you get there. In other words, you want to take good care of your mind and your nervous system so that when you get older, you're still sharp and that you have your mobility. Well, one of the things that helps with mobility, of course, is yoga. And it's one of the reasons why yoga is becoming so popular is that people are realizing that having flexibility and mobility is very important to well-being.
Well, and I think more and more people are realizing that more than exercise, yoga is a exercise program and it is a meditation program, but really the primary function of yoga is to get you to breathe.
Yeah.
It really is a breath program because we live so much in stress and anxiety. And just saying those words, you get a feeling in your body that starts to move up and almost start to close off your throat, Right. And so breath, if you really pay attention to your breath, you can really calm everything down and move everything back into the area where it needs to be. And so there's so many things surrounding breath that are inextricably intertwined with yoga. And one of them is what you're smelling when you're taking that breath.
What do you smell? Where are you? Well, it's funny because it's one of the reasons why churches started instituting having singing, getting everyone to sing because it's so good for you to sing. And of course, when you're singing with a group of people, you don't have to worry how good you sound because they're all drowning you out anyway. But we decided that we should include some new features in the calendar. And one of the things we do, of course, is meditation. Meditation is important to have a safe, quiet spot amid all the chaos, sometimes more than others. And what do you meditate on? Like, I mean, what's the message? I mean, you can get a book of meditations and open it up randomly and get hundreds and hundreds of meditations, but is that really the thing you should be meditating on? It could be, because there is the chance factor, but in the course of the year, our life has a natural progression, and we get a series of messages. And what those messages are, and the way we receive them, is in the lunations, in the new moon and the full moon. This is the big cycle that happens every single month: a new moon followed by a full moon followed by a new moon. And so what we did was we looked at the charts for each month's new moon and each month's full moon. And then we created a meditation specifically for that chart.
So that honors where the sun is, what sign it's in, where the moon is, their position in relation to each other, remembering that the new moon is when the sun and the moon are conjunct. So they're going to be in the same sign at the same degree. Whereas the full moon, the sun and the moon are opposite each other, so they're going to be on opposite signs of the zodiac.
And yet the message changes from year to year. In other words, the new moon in Aries one year will take place in a different part of the sky than the new moon maybe in the next year. And additionally, there's all the other planets. There's the whole configuration of planets. The whole community is there. And so you'll see certain themes that continue because, for instance, Saturn and Jupiter are in relatively the same positions. And then what happens when, for instance, the new moon, the sun and the moon are conjunct Saturn at the lunation? That really infuses that lunation with that message from Saturn.
So we created meditations that sort of help you have a better understanding and more grace in handling the transit that's going on right now.
That's the word, grace, is that it should, it should allow you to go through the year gracefully by being able to focus your meditation at that time during the 2 or 3 days during the full moon or during the new moon, in terms of this being a theme of the meditation to help you get in harmony with your universe and to understand what messages are being sent, what are the themes that are going on at this time, to get yourself in alignment with them.
That's really important. We're constantly getting a lot of messages. Some of them are for us, some of them for the people next door, or for someone else in our family, or we're filtering everything through messages that we're getting from other people in our lives. Get this done, or I need this, or I didn't sleep last night, so I kind of dozed, I'm dozing through the message for the day. So there's all kinds of things that make you sort of lose track about which voice you should be listening to. And so we're trying to filter that a little bit and give you a little bit of a sense of direction by having that meditation. And it's something that you should read a couple of times in a nice slow pace. And when you do that, you're automatically going to be regulating your breath to what you're saying. You can say it out loud is usually better. You could say it to yourself if you're not in a place where you can feel free to vocalize.
And there's a real advantage with something like this in that it gets you in harmony with the times. We're just working on a new book about astrology. It's actually, with all the 30 books we've written, this is our first book strictly on astrology. And I'm right now doing the roughs on a chapter about the Chinese system of what's called their elements, which are actually their stages. And it's a fascinating little chapter. But what's interesting is that in there I explain how that in Chinese medicine, health is seen as energy or qi moving easily from stage to stage to stage to stage through your life, that it moves easily, that each part of you is able to process the energy in order, and then moves through slowly and smoothly and easily. And that disease basically is one of these areas gets stuck, either because the system is congested or it's depressed or it's inflamed. And then you have to get that system to relax so that the energy can move on. Well, the year is like that too. You're going from message to message to message to message. And if you can be in harmony with your messages, your whole life develops a greater sense of grace as you flow through the year. Now, that would be enough by itself. But this is like the old commercials when they would sell you knives and they would say, oh, these knives are wonderful. But then there's more kind of thing. There's actually additional features to this. And Lahni alluded to it before. Of all the different senses, the one that ties most completely into the emotions is scent. And many people, for instance, work with essential oils or have essential oils in their lives. And people who do yoga especially use essential oils a lot. So we decided, being aromatherapists and perfumers for many years, and herbalists, that we would create or choose certain scents for each one of the lunations.
There is suggestion, and if you really don't like one of the scents that are being used there or have a sensitivity to it, you can feel free to sort of change laterally between florals or between citruses or between
Resins,
trees or resins. But they're suggestions, and they are based on the energies of the planets involved. Ralph just said, if the lunation is taking place near the location of Saturn, then that energy of Saturn comes into the choice of deciding which essential oils to use. And of course, at the new moon, as I said, the new moon is when the sun and the moon are in the same sign. So there's only going to be one oil suggested. Whereas when you have the full moon, they're in opposite signs. So those are two energies that you have to balance. So there's usually two there, and then you have your choice to modify that.
Exactly. And the choices are interesting in that we purposely picked oils that you can easily find in your local market, or if you have a natural pharmacy someplace like that.
Right.
They're not difficult. They're not unusual exotics that you've never heard from before.
Exactly.
And once again, as Lahni said, you can go...
Or wildly expensive
that
ones.
too.
You're not going to find helichrysum or something like that in there.
Yeah. Or if you find a helichrysum or you find a rose, which are very expensive oils, you can find versions of them in which they've been mixed with a carrier oil that allows it to be diluted down and still be effective. So you can get the scent, but you just don't have to deal with quite the same potency. And in truth, if you smell 100% Bulgarian rose, you wonder, what am I smelling? This doesn't smell like rose. And the reason is that it's used in very small amounts within a blend because it is so powerful. So when it's blended into a carrier, many times it actually smells more like a rose than the concentrate.
Exactly. Because that concentrate has all the little components that are, involved in the signature of the rose, whereas when you blend it with other things, it brings out, it's kind of like putting salt on a melon. It makes it sweeter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's very interesting. Scent is, and going back to something that Ralph just touched on a little bit, scent is primal. I mean, there are things, scents can trigger memories from infancy. Scents go back to this primary instincts in the body. I mean, I'm sure everybody has a story about a scent. Maybe it's something that your mom cooked for you when you were little. And as soon as you smell it, you're walking by a restaurant and you smell it and you feel like home, or you think of your mother. Or, there's all sorts of, for good or bad. I mean, we have this scent memory that is a sense memory that really can play with our emotions in a very strong way. And so you can use that information in and of itself in order to help calm yourself. Or, like, for example, lavender is supposed to be a very calming oil. There are a few people who are allergic to or sensitive to lavender. And so it would give them a very different reaction. But if it calms you, that's great. But maybe something that calms you is cinnamon, because it makes you... reminds you of something from your childhood that really made you happy and calm. So remember that scent is very, very personal.
In fact, for speaking of cinnamon, is actually, I think, one of the essential oils that's used recommended both in springtime for the Aries lunation, because it's very martial to red bark. And it's also, I think, one of the ones that might be recognized during Capricorn. Well, the reason for that is Mars rules Aries, and which is, there in the springtime, but Mars is exalted, or best friends with Capricorn, which is in the winter. So the scent actually works in both places for similar martial qualities. What would be different would be the proportion.
And the placement.
Yes, and the placement.
So we also have
Yes.
suggestions for placement.
There's
Ralph
more.
mentioned, I know. Ralph mentioned that we are working feng shui. And so when you want to activate an area of your life, one of the ways that you can do it, even if you can't move the furniture that way, or you can't, there's no window there, or you can't add more light, or you can't, life is full of can'ts. I can't. But you can always put scent in an area. So say
Yes.
there's an area of the Bagua, they relate to different areas of your life, and you want to activate the romance section, which is the number 5 Leo section.
Right.
And so there's a window and there's a radiator and there's a wasp nest outside or whatever there is. You
Which
got a
could
million
explain
reasons.
a lot.
Exactly. But you got a million reasons why you can't fix whatever
Right.
is broken in there. Well, one of the things you have to look at is, are you ready to fix it?
Right.
Because with all these impediments, maybe
Right.
you're not ready.
Right.
But whatever situation you have
If you're optimistic.
in your architecture, you can always add scent somewhere.
Right,
Even
exactly.
if it just means putting it in a water bottle with spray and
Right.
spraying the curtains or spraying a window or spraying it on the carpet or something like that. So you can add that scent. And then every time that you smell that scent, you're reminded not only of what that scent is from and what it represents to you, but the area of your life that you want to pay attention to. And it allows you to think either consciously or unconsciously about what steps are you taking to achieve whatever goal you've set for yourself in that area of your life.
Now, what we use in the Yorubagwa was something that it's actually the Chinese discovered this a long time ago, that because our fields are so strong, our auric fields are so strong, when we go into a space, we literally imprint our energy on the space. And so a space tends to have 12 polarities, and they align with the 12 signs. So what we've done is that each one of the lunations, we have a little chart for you that recommends where to put the essential oil. And at the full moon, there's 2 spots to put it because they're polarities. So you make the blend, if it's 2 oils, and you put some in both spots. Or if you have one oil, then it just goes in one spot. And you can put a diffuser there. Like I said, Lahni said you can spray. Be very careful when you're working with essential oils because they are very potent. You don't want to get them on your skin, okay, unless they're really, really diluted. So, keep them away from your eyes. My whole point in this is they are very potent. It takes 1 ton of rose petals to make an ounce of rose oil.
Right. They're very, very concentrated.
They're very concentrated. Not only that, they're very high in salicylates, which is the part of the plant that's part of the hormonal system that sends messages out. So they're highly messaging. So when you're working with them, you're dealing with like little lightning in a bottle here. Maybe you wear gloves.
They're the WhatsApp of plants.
They are. But you will find that by going to each one of these areas each month with the lunation, you will clear the energy in that part of your life. So each month, you're going to get a meditation. It's going to help you get in a state of grace, where you're in harmony with the universe, where you're in harmony with the times. Then you're going to get an essential oil that's going to affect your emotions in a way that's in harmony with that. Then you're going to take that and put it in the areas in which your energetic charge is naturally active in those areas, and you're going to use those oils to clear them of any kind of negativity. So in the course of the year, you're going to go through all 12 octaves of your life and clear out any old debris and raise the frequency.
I like 12 octaves. That's neat because the Asian Bagua is 8 parts.
Yes.
That's what Bagua literally means. And we created the Western one, and that has 12 because we have 12 signs in our zodiac. And it's very interesting to say your octaves. But I want to take a minute. Can I take a minute to give a couple of essential oil tips? Because you touched on this before. They're very, very energized and strong. And so we just try to be careful and not put them directly on the skin unless you've diluted them with some carrier oil. Right. But beyond that, you want to be careful with citrus oils. We had a friend who put a drop of lemon on their third eye. They were trying to activate the third eye with the energizing energy of the citrus from the lemon. And it makes you very photosensitive. So she got a sunburn just in that spot, and it never faded away. When it went to tan, she always had a much darker tan spot
Right,
there.
yes.
So recognize that the citruses are, you have to be super careful if you go outside into the sun with them. Also with strong mints like peppermint, wintergreen, even spearmint, you want to be very careful using them around children under the ages of 2 because they're very energizing, especially to the lungs. And the airways from small children are very sensitive and very fine. And if there's any dilation or swelling of them, it could block off their airways. So you want to really be careful with citrus.
If you have children in the house, keep those oils on the top shelf.
Right, right.
Yeah. We think that this combination of tools, and that's what we realize, it's a combination of tools, really comes from where we are with astrology. With us, astrology has always been a part of life. It's not looking up at the stars as a separate thing. It's about how does this integrate into your life? How do you use this energy to help yourself be in harmony with the universe? You know, being in a state of grace means basically being in harmony with the universe, working with the seasons. You know, we think of our calendar as having 4 seasons, but in truth, it has 12 seasons. Each one of the signs is a season. You know, they're connected into 3 groups, into 4 groups of 3 each that we call spring, summer, autumn, and winter. But each month, each series of lunations is its own little season. And because of our own body cycles, we live with that cycle.
Well, and what I really like about integrating this with the calendar is that, invariably we'll get somebody who says, oh, I'm having these really bad transits, or I've got all this challenging stuff going on. It's one thing to be able to look ahead and see what's coming and try to prepare yourself as best you can. Sometimes you're not prepared for the Spanish Inquisition. But at least this, with the meditations and the essential oils, empowers you to make that transit easier, or to get through that, or get an understanding of what that transit's about, and make it a little bit more comfortable, and you feel less immobilized. You feel like you're taking some control over this transit. Exactly.
You're empowered. And it's important in life. So there's so many things in life, especially, for instance, when like all the outer planets are direct. You feel like everything's being run from out there someplace. And you feel very disempowered by that. When they all go retrograde, you feel like, well, they've gone to lunch out there and I actually have some control over my life. But we don't want to feel disempowered in life. We're not here to be disempowered. We're here to be creative. So get your calendar, get out the oils, look ahead, plan ahead, keep your chin up, and see us next time on Astrologers Chatting Over Coffee.